Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must-attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you. Looking for a bold way to boost your business? Advertise with Silverline Comics, reaching readers across the U.S. and around the world. Affordable rates, passionate fans, and national and international exposure, all packed inside thrilling, action-packed comics. All ads must be PG-13, perfect for reaching all ages. Spots are limited. Grab your ad space today and become part of the adventure. Silverline Comics, where adventure lives and your brand thrives. Email us at silverlinepublishingllc@gmail.com for more information. And make mine Silverline.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. I am not Tim TK. Our usual host, Tim, is off on a side adventure, side quest, and so we are gonna do our best to hold down the fort. To my whatever that direction is Ron Fortier. How you doing, Ron?
Hey, doing well. Hi, everybody.
All right, we got David Rios in the corner of you. I can't believe I'm pointing the right way.
You're kind of backwards for me, but hello.
And Brett Larson.
Hi.
Got a cool subject today to talk about. We are talking about one-word themes when it comes to writing your stories, writing your coming up with the concept for your book and whatnot. It's the idea of starting your creation process or starting the work using one word as a theme. And given the fact that I am not a writer, this is not my area of expertise. I am going to rely on Ron and Brent.
Well, this whole idea of one word popped up to me years ago when Alan Moore was writing The Watchmen for DC, and just popped up on the scene out of nowhere, is pretty much all right as far as American comic readers were. They knew who he was over in England, but it was The Watchmen, and that really made us sit up and take notice. And so in the middle of that run, he was interviewed for, I think, Comic Scene, an offshoot of Styleog magazine. And the interview asked him a question about, the creative process. What did he have any kind of special way you attacked the story or came up with concepts, et cetera, et cetera. And I found his answer fascinating because Moore basically said, I like to take a story and boil it down to one word and then focus on that word during the time I'm writing the scripts, when I'm creating plots, subplots, or whatever. But it becomes like a nucleus of his atom, that world he's creating. But it's that one word that's the key that makes it all come together, that keeps it cohesive. Okay. So, hey, I'm thinking of that and remembering that, months later when I'm sitting down trying to put together a Green Hornet proposal that I'd hoped to take with me to San Diego that year. And in the process of doing that, especially with a character that's been around for a while, and that, once, if I can make it happen and get my hands on those characters, I hope to do other things with them. So it was never a case where I just wanted to do a brand new Green Hornet and run away with that. It was basically the idea of who's the Green Hornet, where did he come from, et cetera, et cetera. And I started reaching out to a lot of my friends in the business, writers and fellow artists and people who knew the history of old time radio, et cetera, and collecting articles and whatnot about the Green Hornet, to the point where, as I did that, the idea came to me of doing it as a generational thing, that I would divide the concept, starting with the original Green Hornet from the radio, who was then dramatized in 2 Universal cliffhanger serials. Those things that they did 15 chapters. You went to the movie theaters, and before the main feature, you had a serial with 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes every week, your hero was in dire jeopardy. And, would he survive? And you had to come back the following week to see if he did or not, et cetera, et cetera. Those things were a hoot. They were a ball. And so in 1940, based on the success of the radio program, Universal got the rights and did a Green Hornet serial. It proved to be so successful, they came back the following year and did a sequel called The Green Hornet Strikes Again. Okay, so now basically in my mind, my thinking, that's the original Green Hornet, right? Now jump ahead to the 1960s, 67, 68, and ABC decides to revive him on television, and we get that one short season, 26 half-hour episodes with Van Williams as a Green Hornet and Bruce Lee as Kato. But what they did was basically said, this is the only Green Hornet. They totally ignored what had happened on radio for years and those 2 marvelous Green Hornet serials. Okay, well, that's their right to do. They got the rights, from the copy holders and whatever, and they create a second iteration of these characters. So here I am trying to assemble as yet a third, concept or interpretation. And I'm like, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool if we didn't just forget those previous incarnations and incorporated them in one storyline, one family storyline? All right. And the minute that idea started coming to me, I'm remembering Alan Moore's interview. And all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, that's the word, family. This is what I'm writing. I'm writing about a family. And as I started digging into it, and I'm researching the 1930s, all right, and what that world was like, 1940s, World War II, then, moving up to the 50s and 60s. So what you see there is a composite illustration pinup that artist Jeff Butler did during the heyday of our working on this series together. And to the upper left-hand side, the top, you have the original Green Hornet, who was Britt Reed. And next to him, with the goggles, the driver's goggles, is his chauffeur, Icano Kato. All right. Switch over to the right side of that, and you have the TV iterations. All right, with the far right Green Hornet being Britt Reed Jr., his nephew, and Hayashi Kato, the son of Ikano. All right, now this whole write-up, this whole putting it together, we come up to the third generation of Green Hornets, and that's Britt's own nephew at the bottom on the left side, and that's Paul Reed. And next to him is Hayashi's kid sister, Mishi Kato. And that was it. I had, in writing the proposal, the concepts, the conflicts, who their arch enemies were. I mean, I ended up with a proposal that was like a short telephone directory. I mean, that thing was over 40 pages long, and it had these, 2 sets of family trees, the Reeds and the Catos. And because of this, I found it was so much fun developing the characters as members of this extended family, a family of heroes that, basically had this true running line of justice that they adhered to. And all of them, continue. And, let me add, I mean, one of the things that you don't see in this particular illustration, but I ideally was part of the whole concept, and what led me to, latch on to that word family, is that even in the old radio program, all right, Green Hornet premiered on XYZ out of Detroit. And he was created by writer Fran Stryker and the radio manager George W. Trendle, who were the same people who 2 years previously had given the world the Lone Ranger. And in the process of creating the Green Hornet, Stryker basically thought the idea of, well, we'll do a modern version of the Lone Ranger serial, a guy who works outside of the law to bring justice and bring criminals, to trial and all this stuff. All right, the typical hero. So instead of an Indian companion, he's got this, Oriental chauffeur. Instead of Io Silver, he's got the Black Beauty, the souped-up roadster and whatever. All well and good, to the point where they added a little Easter egg of their own, i.e., in the six months Hornet was on the radio and became just as popular as the Lone Ranger, they wrote in a story where Britt Reed, the Green Hornet's father, was actually Dan Reed, the nephew of John Reed, a.k.a. the Lone Ranger. So, I mean, yeah, I'm thinking the word family and doing this all, but honestly, I just tripped over what was already there, all right? And let me tell you, if you're ever going to get an assignment to work on an existing property, an existing character or whatever, best advice I can give to any writer tackling that is do your homework, research those characters frontwards, sideways, upwards, and down, and learn everything you can about them, because realizing this connection between the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet was just a hidden gem. It just added so much to the whole family connection thing. We write the series. Took us 7 issues to launch, from issue number 1 to issue number 7, from the original Green Hornet's last case, all the way through his retirement, his nephew taking over the mask, all the way through the 60s. Beyond that, again, another nephew taking the role, and then Mishi coming along and assuming her older brother, Bruce Lee character, as she becomes the first ever female Green Kato. 7 issues across the board. I never realized how popular that was going to be until I went back to San Diego the year after I'd been given the assignment and, the pun intended, green light to go ahead and write this series. But the reception among comic readers was phenomenal. Caught me flat-footed. It launched my career as a professional comic book writer, and it's still to this day what I am primarily noted for having created, and I'm damn proud of it. And so is Jeff Butler. And I had a fan recently on Facebook ask if there was ever a chance I'd ever get back to those characters again. And my answer to that was, hey, one never knows. Sometimes dreams come true. It would be a ball. It would be a ball to see basically where they are today. It was like, 30 years ago that I was writing this. I would just pick it up. I would just take the family. And I mean, when we ended the series after 2.5 years at Now Comics, Britt Reed Jr., the 60s Green Hornet, had married his secretary Lenore because his nephew had gone on to take over the role of the Green Hornet. So he had basically retired to being the newspaper publisher and owner of the television station, whatever, to civilian life with his wife. And they had a son named Danny, who by the end of the series, Danny was about 5 or 6 years old. And man, if I were to go back to this series now, 30 some odd years later, guess who would be the new Green Hornet? It's right there. So there you go. There's my 2 cents with this. But honestly, I never forgot the word family. All right. It became a subconscious anchor as I was writing issue after issue, especially after creating that phenomenal, proposal package, which I handed off to then owner and publisher of Now Comics, Tony Caputo, who then turned around a few weeks after the San Diego Con and went to New York City and met with the folks at Leisure Concepts, who back then in 1989, 1990, were the rights holders. They were the property holders of the Green Hornet. When WXKZ finally was sold back in the 50s, Trendle sat down with Stryker and basically owing him for what he had done, i.e. given him the Lone Ranger and the Green Hornet, Trendle basically said, all right, well, look, these are the 2 most valuable properties we have here at the station. All right, which one do you want? And I'll have my lawyers draw up properties and we'll shake hands, go our separate ways, whatever. Stryker took the Lone Ranger and signed it and became the rights holder and moved to Florida. He didn't live much longer after he moved to Florida. I think 5 or 6 years later, he died in a tragic car accident, which was a real, tragedy. But he, I believe, had a daughter, and she inherited his estate and those rights. Meanwhile, Trendle, also married, had a son, and when he eventually passed away, his son, George Trendle Jr., inherited the copyrights to the Green Hornet. So by the 1989, 1990, he had hired this property management outfit out of New York called Leisure Concepts, and they managed the property for him. So that's who Tony had to go see. Now, before going to see them, he mailed them my proposal. He'd set up an appointment. He sent them that 40-page proposal, flew to New York, and had a meeting with them. Unbelievable. I got this secondhand from Tony, but literally the day he walked in to the conference room and met the people who were running the property, and that was a gentleman and a young lady, they basically told him that ever since the TV show had gone off the air, they had been constantly inundated with all kinds of comic book proposals to do the Green Hornet again. Because, I mean, Bruce Lee got famous, made that show, and people, 26 episodes. That's all people ever got. The biggest crime in the world. ABC didn't renew it. The story behind that is simple. They had wanted to make the TV show straight as far as a great crime action series. Whereas at the same time, as everybody knows, the same year they had launched the Batman series, which was camp, pure, done for laughs. Well, after the first season, some of the bigwigs at ABC thought that the Green Hornet was too serious for the kids and that they should camp it up and make it silly like they did Batman. And when they went to Bill Dozer, the producer of the Green Hornet show, and said, hey, we want you to camp this up, Dozer wouldn't do it. And he took cancellation instead. And that was the end of the Green Hornet TV show. So now, again, the whole thing with this is comic companies are going to leisure in the interim, those years between 68 and 1989, 1990. I mean, they literally had people from DC sending them proposals. They had people from Marvel sending them proposals, people from Image. I mean, not Image was there, but Dark Horse and some of the other existing comic companies all trying. Dell Comics Dell had done 3 comic books based on the TV series, but then the series folded, and so did their rights to do comics. All right. So here they are telling Caputo this, right? And basically his question, his unasked question was, well, why on earth didn't you take any one of those? And the answer was simply the fact that all those other proposals only wanted to do a new Green Hornet, a la like they'd done the TV, i.e. ignore the past. There was no other Green Hornet except what we're giving you right here and now. And when they read my proposal and saw the generational thing, the family legacy thing, and all the the characters, the brothers, the sisters, the cousins. I mean, I had the TV show, the 60s Green Hornet. I had the existing in the TV show, the district attorney was in on the Green Hornet secret. Okay, fine. When we get to the 80s Green Hornet that myself and Jeff Butler created together, I wanted that same little connection. I made the existing district attorney or police commissioner actually Britt's cousin, another member of the family, who could never be the Green Hornet, but she went on, got a law degree, ended up working for the state and the city, and was the police commissioner, i.e., district attorney. And she would work with him, knowing his secret identity. So again, it was they loved the whole family thing big time. And again, it was just, you want to talk about hitting the bullseye right out. I don't think if I'd have just gone in with the concept of just revamping and just doing another Green Hornet, we'd have got kicked out the door just like all those other proposals. Right. But the property people saw the possibilities of what this could be and said, that's it. They signed a contract with Now Comics to do a monthly Green Hornet comic book. And, that later that night, Tony in his hotel room called me at home and said, start writing. We got the deal. There you go.
That's awesome. All from the stem of a one-word theme for
one word,
the
family.
You wrote.
Yeah.
All right, Brent, can we break Kalis down to a one-word theme?
Yeah, although it probably would need more. Basically, Kalis is a redemption story, and which seems to say nothing because there's so many redemption stories out there. But what's funny is, I mean, the real fun of theme is you got to start somewhere with the understanding that they say everything's already been done. Okay, that's fine. So you start with what everyone thinks the story you're going to tell is, but then you start to play with it and then you make it your own. So if I was to say Kalis is a redemption story, I would say it's true, but then I start to mess with things like, well, why, he's just a guy. He was on this cool space mission. What would he need redemption for? Oh, and then suddenly I've got, okay, well, maybe he did this really bad thing, or maybe he thought he was doing this really good thing and it went sour. Or there's all these different ways you can go with it, which is, I don't know, most of the fun. I mean, we've seen so many movies that are revenge themes, but the really good ones. I mean, Quentin Tarantino, that's like his favorite thing.
Right.
And I wonder if he actually has any real enemies, because maybe he's dispatched with all of them. I don't know, but his movies are so good, and it's because he starts with revenge. I mean, you could say Quentin Tarantino does revenge movies, and yet they're all different, and they
Right.
all,
And it builds out from there.
yeah, there's so many different facets to the idea of revenge, and there's so many different facets to the idea of redemption. Namely, can you ever really get redemption? Who gets to say when you are done fighting for redemption? Who gets to say when you've achieved it? Who gets to say if your quest for redemption is actually another bad thing that you're doing? I mean, there's so many different ways, and that's really the fun of the whole idea of theme, I think. And
Well, yeah, I mean, it's obvious, Brent. You're mining it, okay? I mean, you just spent the last 6 minutes mining one word, okay? That's it. That's brilliant. That's what we're talking about here tonight. All right, it's
Yeah.
exactly what that is. All right, and in your own your own concepts of that word, that definition, and how you use it to tell stories. All right, which is
Yeah.
one word.
All right.
It's there.
So
it's an anchor.
I have a question. I have a couple questions, actually, a few questions. But my first one is, from both your point of view, and if Dave wants to chime in, I don't have a dog in this race, but
We'll see.
what are the benefits to creating your story? What are the benefits of a one-word theme?
I think it can give you an entry into the story. All right. I mean, before I sent you 3 covers.
Yep.
Because in thinking about this over the week, I was looking back on some of the things that I've done in the past and what would fit with this. All right. And I just gave you that long little backstory on the Green Hornet, which was the primary one. But at the same time that I was at that same convention, at that time, Now Comics was publishing The Terminator, based on the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, right? And what they had done is they had gone and basically hired a science fiction writer, all right, who was like a well-known guy who'd been on the New York Times bestseller list several times. And he came on board, and they started publishing this. They had a guy from Texas named Tom Tenney who was doing the artwork. And basically what happens is, this was all they wanted to do, the comic not in modern times as the Terminator movie had been, but they wanted to set it in that future world with John Connors, who you see on this particular cover, and the rest of mankind fighting Skynet and the Terminator robots. Okay. So they're like 8 to 9 issues into this book, and they're getting all kinds of letters that the fans aren't happy with the book because there's not a whole lot of action in it, supposedly. Supposedly, the author, all right, is giving them word-heavy scripts. Tenney's not happy drawing this because he's drawing talking heads all the time, all right? And so here comes yours truly in, that same weekend that I would ultimately, discuss Green Hornet with him. But Tony asked me if I'd like to take a shot at taking over writing Terminator. And to be quite honest, it was the furthest thing from my mind when I went to San Diego. I had other things that I thought I'd like to do, other characters I was hoping I could probably get to work on, whatever. But here's this thing, pretty much dumped into my lap. I need somebody to take over writing Terminator and turn it around, hopefully, and get the fans back on board to support it. All right. So he gives me a bunch of comics, and my wife and I finish the day. We go back to our hotel room right after dinner, and I'm grousing a little bit because it's not what I want to do. And my wife about pretty much gets ready to slap the shit out of me because hey, you came here to be a writer, and somebody's offering you money to write comic books, and you're going to say no, it's not what I want to write. She goes, that ain't happening. Okay. So sure enough, next day went back, ran into Tony and said, all right, when I get home, I'll send you some plot ideas. If you guys are okay with it, I'm your guy. All right. So aside from the other stuff, the Green Hornet, I get back home to New Hampshire where I was living then. And over the next couple of days, I sit down and read those books. And at the same time, I'm grappling with the fact that, again, it's way too wordy. It's slow moving. The guy's so caught up in motivation and, subtext of the emotions of the human fighters and all this good stuff. And there's very little action at all. And I'm trying to get a handle on how I can take this over. So you get to the point where you say, well, the heck with the comic. I grab my VHS of the Terminator and I slap it in, the machine and rewatch that movie back to back, like 5 times in a row. And I keep watching it, especially those scenes that take place in the future that this comic series is based on. And somewheres in that process of watching what James Cameron did, all of a sudden it hits me like a 2x4 because I had grown up in the 50s reading DC's horror comics starring Sergeant Rock, Our Army at War. And just like that, the third or fourth viewing of the movie, I turned around, looked at my wife, and I said, son of a bitch. I said, this is a war story. And then I knew how to write this. All right. I mean, this guy had never, ever given you characterizations of John Connor's squad. All right. It's basically the only character you had that anybody knew was Connors, and then the robots. And like I said, Connors is walking around musing about, if they were going to survive or die or whatever. Right. In my first script, I basically started creating squad members. All right. Much like Robert Conagher had done with Easy Company in the DC comics. All right. And he'd given us Bulldozer, Ice Cream Soldier, and a slew of others that everybody remembered and you got involved with. And I created a combat squad and started writing Terminator as a science fiction war comic. And if you're going to have a word that boils down to it, it was combat. This was combat. This is what I was writing. Sent the scripts in. Tenny went crazy because now he's drawing things blowing up right and left. He's defining characters that the fans could understand and appreciate. And sure enough, sales, approvals, fan letters, everything started to turn and twist around. And that's because, again, my own background as a comic book fan all my life up until this point, and realizing the real element of what Cameron had tried to do in his films and trying to bring that to the graphic, form, to still, pages and panels. And again, once I had the essence, the real nucleus of what Terminator was, combat, then it became a joy for me to write. And then ultimately, like I said, I ended up getting the Green Hornet, and suddenly out of nowhere is this kid from New Hampshire who works in a factory by day, goes home at night and becomes the comic book writer, So, hey, there you go. Another one.
Right. Who doesn't like drawing explosions?
Oh, hey, gunfights and super automatic weapons and Lord,
lots of ink on a page. You have to use your brush
there you
strokes.
go. Yeah, I mean, we even expanded Connor's persona. I gave him a nickname, the Golden Bear. All right. Oh yeah.
Nice.
Oh, but again, a one-word theme. It works. It really, really works.
All right. My next question is going from writing, if you have your concept that you have out, that you want to write your book, your murder board, as Tim and I like to say, does writing from a one-word theme, does it change the way you write the story, or does it change it at all? Does the way you write, from a bigger theme, like Brent said, a redemption story, a revenge story. I mean, yeah, those are two words, but you would elaborate a little bit more. But does the way you write it change at all between narrowing down the subject to one word or a multi pitch line?
Well, I'll take a stab at that one. And the funny thing for me is I don't really write with a theme in mind. For me, the theme comes later because in a weird way, it's almost like, I'm never really I really want to write a story about honor or something like that. But what I will think is, I have a really cool idea about, I don't know, a guy who is, who wants to be a superhero and gets powers, but has to struggle with the fact that he's also at heart a coward, and and I might start out thinking, oh, okay, well, if I'm going to boil down that, I guess I would say the theme is being courageous. Okay, but I start writing the story, and this has happened to me so many times, it makes me laugh. And I start realizing that I'm not really writing the story after a while. I'm not writing about a guy who needs to be courageous. I'm writing about a guy who needs to be humble, maybe because all this time he's been running, but he keeps having such a big image of himself that he is constantly recognizing is not true anymore. And in a way, he has to embrace his own humility if he's going to do anything. So I didn't really start out trying to tell a story about humility or about recognizing your limitations. I wanted to go in the opposite direction with courage. And yet, as the story unfolds in my mind and I'm writing it and I'm writing several drafts, I'm realizing the one-word theme had to change. Like the story, when I'm writing stories, I don't really try to bend them towards a theme. It's like I'm listening to some inner voice that I don't really understand, and half the time doesn't really work out the way I think it should. It takes me in another direction, and the theme a different theme starts to emerge. So for me, that's, again, it's half the fun. Really, like, it's almost like that's where I start to, it's almost a sense of catharsis. It's like it's almost like my inner therapist is telling me, what am I really wrestling with as a mid-50s Western white male these days? And the answer is, I don't know. I think I'll tell a story. And then as I'm telling it, suddenly I start seeing, oh, yeah. Remember I wrote a story several years ago about a guy who is a race of time travelers. And they get to see all these cool things in history, but they're also cursed with this sense of they're not able to affect anything. They have no impact on history. They can embrace all the pleasures they want. They can go anywhere they want, but nothing they do matters. It took me months to realize I did not like my job. And I was using my story as a way to externalize this sense of futility that I've been struggling with at the time. And so in a way, I did not set out to do that. I set out to just tell a cool time traveler story. And the one-word theme, or any theme for that matter, surfaced later. And maybe I was able to use it then to kind of guide the story a little bit more. But by then, the story was largely set. So I don't know. It's funny. I don't use it as a guiding light. If anything, I use it almost more like a light to look backwards on what I've done and see what I was thinking that I didn't know I was thinking. So.
Okay. I guess I should ask Dave, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? Dave's just enjoying the show.
No, I'm in the same boat you are. I don't
Right.
I don't write things. I get little snippets and stories in my head about some things, but I don't think I could boil it down to a one-word theme or anything like that.
See, and
It's
until it was brought up on the schedule of one-word theme, I actually didn't even know that was a thing. I'll be honest.
Well, I mean, I guess a question that, since, I just feel like you guys must be feeling left out. Okay, so you guys actually work on the art side of things, but I'm assuming that you guys like comics in some capacity. So I'm curious, can you think of any comics you've read where you were drawn in because of the art and maybe you liked the characters, but later on it really stuck with you?
Yeah, I would imagine that I have. There's several books that I've read that definitely stick with me. I mean, one series, like if I were to spit one off the top of my head, probably the Age of Apocalypse storyline from Marvel.
Oh yeah, mid-90s.
Yep. Oh man, it was different. It was change. You know what I mean? And
okay, which is kind of a theme.
It kind of is,
And what's fun about that is you're dealing with a comic book medium, especially a superhero IP, with lots of fans. Frankly, change. I remember when Age of Apocalypse dropped, and then they started all the new books and stuff, and I was like, "This is so wacky." They have change. Change doesn't come to that universe. It's only kind of nudged off track just a little, enough so you can get it back on track. So,
it reminded me of Sliders.
Yeah.
Because of alternate reality, like everything's basically the same. It's a bit of a skew. You know what I mean? So, you had Wolverine, and it's not spoilers, people. It came out like what you said, 90s.
Yeah, mid-90s, wasn't it?
But like Wolverine gets his hand cut off, like at the beginning of his storyline with Jean Grey. He's got a metal nub over his hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they paid a homage to it in Deadpool Wolverine.
They sure did. They sure did. I had to respect that, and the big poofy hair that he had in it.
Yeah, that was great.
But I mean, I think that if it came down to specific genres, I guess genres can be one-word themes, right? Because I'm a huge fan of almost anything post-apocalyptic and Western.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's funny is, I mean, a lot of those, it makes you wonder why people love post-apocalyptic stuff so much. And it's because of the theme of not just change, but reset. You know what I mean? Like, we live in a society where you can tick off very easily all the stupid crap you care about that doesn't actually matter. So what we need is a good old-fashioned zombie apocalypse.
Good old-fashioned reset.
You don't care what version iPhone you have. You care about not getting ate.
Right.
And people just find that refreshing. It's like, one word, change, survival, I suppose. But why is this such a huge? And I guess that is when you're thinking one word theme. That's kind of what you're really trying to get at, is not just what do you think is a one word summation of not just your story, but why people should care about your story. And it means it has to resonate with whatever audience you're pitching to. And, you know, Western world loves.
Yeah, I mean, you made a comment earlier, Brent. I mean, there are times when you can write something and basically have, a general idea or concept of what you're writing, what you want to write, but only after you've finished it, half of it, most of it, or whatever, and look back and start scratching your head going, well, okay, so where did that come from? Okay, that wasn't, what I was driving at. And I think one of the last cover I sent the guys this afternoon is one of those projects that happened to me, and I think is a back end tagline to what we've been talking about tonight, and that's I had this idea to write an alternate world pulp adventure, because arguably, aside from the Shadow, one of the greatest pulp characters of all times, one of the greatest pulp series, was Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze. And Doc ran around, unlike the Shadow, who was hidden in the dark ways and mysterious and whatever, and had his select group of agents. Doc was the head of a team. He had 5 experts, his men, right? One was a chief physicist. The other one was a major engineer. The other one was a chemist. The other one was a top lawyer in New York. Doc's 5 men, all right? And I'm reading this as a teenager and falling in love with the whole concept of the pulps. And I'm thinking to myself, dang, it would be really cool to have a female Doc Savage, right? And her team of all-girl pros or whatever. Okay. So that being the case, and knowing that never happened in the 30s or 40s here, let's make it an alternate world. So I set off to start writing this alternate world adventure and decided I was going to throw in everything, including the kitchen sink, right? I mean, basically, I was going to say, all right, the Roman Empire didn't totally disappear, all right? The African core that went into Africa actually ended up meeting the Maasai tribes and intermarrying with them until eventually they colonized what is Rome, South Africa, a pagan country, all right? In the meantime, World War I did happen, but after World War I, the League of Nations became a power in the world and had its own army. Therefore, when this upstart guy named Hitler in Germany decided to come forward with his little socialist philosophies, they went and arrested him, locked him up in Switzerland in a pen, and there was never a World War II. Okay, now we're moving right along here. Okay. And then finally, I'm talking the sociology, I'm talking history, et cetera, and the big twist, the one little thing that was going to make this whole melange, instead of the Jewish people awaiting a Messiah, and when he comes they don't believe him, and you have the birth of Christianity, the Messiah arrives and they believe her. She's a female Messiah who is crucified and resurrected. And the Jewish people believe that's the Messiah. Christianity becomes full bloom and is centered in Jerusalem. So now you have a world ruled by the power of the League of Nations. You have a pagan empire in Africa, and you have a Christian empire of its own world in the West and centered in Jerusalem. All right. In the middle of all this, you have a group of female agents of the League of Nations, led by Indra Divine and her 3 cohorts. All right. Rocky, ace pilot, Copper Falad, an Arabian mechanic who can fix anything in the world. And finally, her last and college friend, all right, Jane, who is a world science chemist. And as the story opens up, the Roman Empire is making noises to start another war. And so the League sends Indra and the girls to check this out. And that was their cover story when they travel around the world, is they do these aviation tricks with planes and whatever. And so they're like entertainers. And since Indra was born and raised in New England, they're called the Boston Bombers. All right. I mean, literally, like I said, I threw the kitchen sink into this thing. It was a wild madcap ride, especially having the Pope being a female. Indra's own mother is a married bishop, the Bishop of Boston. Okay. And Indra, when she went to college with her friend Jane, one of the girls that she went to college with is an ensign in the Roman Air Corps. And they fly around these giant dirigible navies. All right, back and forth. Okay, I'm not going to bore you what the whole plot of the whole story was. It was a 5-issue miniseries that Caliber printed and got done. We eventually, years later, collected it as a miniseries. Rob Davis, my good old buddy, did the cover for this. And that's the reprint altogether as one novel. Now, as I started talking about this, I'm doing an alternate pulp. That's what this is all about. Trying to put in as much action as I can, as much, alternate world craziness, a world like, Jose said, like ours, but not like ours. This is 1970.
Slightly
There's no jet
askew.
planes. Most of the science that developed during World War II hasn't happened in this world because there was no World War II or the advancement of all kinds of different science. All right. So I'm thinking of all these things writing this. The furthest thing from my mind, until after it's all done, published in print, is that, holy smokes, this was so female centered. This was centered around women. This is all about women. The women that I know in my life, they became models, inspirations for these characters, both good and bad, to the point of sitting back and today looking at this and thinking about doing the show tonight. And I went, you know what? If I gave a 1-word description of bombers, it would be sisters. Not what I intended.
Right.
It's what I wrote.
It's kind of like what Brent said, like, once you get through going in your story one night and then you look back, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it just happened. Okay. It's like Brent said earlier, it's what you have in your head. It's just like, I look at, my own sisters, my wife, girls I knew in school, when I was in the military and whatever, to help shape these characters. Not only the bombers, but like I said, the Roman, enemies they face, other females, all right, on the other side, her own mother, what her life was like, a female pope, all those kind of things. And it really forced my attention on, what my feelings were, my perceptions, all right, of where women are today in the world, what they've achieved, okay, what they still have, left to achieve, hopefully, but it ended up allowing me to tell, hopefully, what was a really, really good story that would entertain people at its core.
I like that.
You never know what's going to happen when you
Right.
face that blank piece of paper, right, Brent?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's scary, but it's pretty cool too.
Oh.
Right. The look back afterwards. That's what for me, like having this conversation with you guys, and the boil down for me was the look back. You know what I mean? The like, oh, you have this one word theme that you are starting your story with, but the one I guess that kind of got me was the starting in a direction and then looking back is like, oh, that's not really the theme I started with, but it's kind of what it's evolved into.
Yeah, because it's the better story.
Yeah,
it's what the story's supposed to be, right? I mean, there are times when you go, okay, so where the heck did that come from? I mean, does this world really exist someplace, and I'm just mentally tapping into it? I mean, I'm just a reporter. It's like, oh, okay, this is that. I got to get this down on paper. In the world and the cosmos, who's to say, right? The multiverse. That all this stuff is out there, right? And us writers just tap into it every now and then. Like, look out.
That's what they call the zone. Doesn't happen all the time, but when it does,
that means an entirely different thing from my point of view.
Yeah, there you go.
The zone means I'm up until 5 o'clock in the morning and the sun's starting to come up while I'm still working on inks on something.
Yeah, for me, the zone means holy cow, I'm not looking at the clock anymore. I'm actually caring about what I'm writing. Yay! So.
Like we've seen Dave's work. Dave's always in the zone. He's always locked in.
I'm in some zone. I don't know what zone it is.
I'm in a zone. Not a zone I want to be in.
Typically, it's the non-sleep zone.
Oh, I've lived in that zone. I'm a resident, a long-term resident.
Yeah.
I'm approaching that zone.
Right. I get that. I get it. All righty. Any last words from my friends on here? Any last words about one-word themes or just themes in general when it comes to writing?
Well, I just wonder if we know we've established that you can start writing from a theme and say, all right, like family and all this stuff and go forward. But what seems to be the case is many, many, many times what you'll find is you will go through and write things, and you can always, or most of the time at the end, once you're at the end, you can go back and say, well, what was my theme? And you can recognize the theme. It may just be, as you went along, you took this left turn, this right turn, whatever. But ultimately, you can pretty much boil it down to a theme, I think, in many, many cases, So that's just kind of my thing. And I think Ron's last example was a perfect example of that. I don't think he ever went through and decided to make the series based off of the theme of sisters, but it was a learning experience from him doing it and ending up there that sisterhood was the recurring theme, and he wrote it, but he didn't plan to write it. So
right, no, right. You're right. It was like it's the story. I mean, when I write, and you have these major characters in your head when you're telling a story, when you're working the plot. All right, so you get the hero, you get the villain. Okay, you get the major characters, but I have found that as I'm developing the actual scripts, I am trying my best to create believable supporting characters that these primary characters work off of. And 9 out of 10 times, supporting characters end up taking center stage in their interactions with the villain or the hero. And again, it's what, I was telling Brent, they start telling me who they are. I might have an idea who the hero or the villain is, but once you develop supporting characters, the henchman or the sidekick or whatever, right? It just expands that world and makes it that much more believable, right? Because the more real you can make any one of your characters, the potential for a different plot to suddenly emerge that you had no idea was there is there. That's that magic of writing. All right. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? Well, it came from a character that you had no intentions of writing 2 days ago, but now you have, and he or she is like taking you by the hand saying, here you go.
Well, I kind of wanted to, and I may need to correct me because it was a little bit ago, but Brent's initial question was about, what, and clarity, and clarify for me, but, what brought you in what idea, what story brought you in? And I've said it many times, but a huge one for me was Mage for Kevin Matstick. And what it was, the things that went on it, and it kind of ties to what Ron just said, was it was a story about an everyday person. An everyday person gets thrown into a life that surreal life and everything, it's doesn't know what to do, and he hooks up with this magician. So you're like, hey, this magician, this is going to be the big guy in the story, right? He's, fantastic, and green magic, all this stuff. And then you start getting support characters, Sean, Edsel, all the support characters coming in, and they're their own little team. But the thing about it, and I have to give Matt Wagner a lot of credit for the way he did it. It's amazing. But as you go along in the story, come to find out that that it's about them being supporting characters for Kevin Matstick. Even Murph, the mage, is not. The story's about Kevin and his transition to be the superhero, to fulfill his destiny. It's decades old, but maybe I don't want to spoil everything. But if you haven't read it, read it. It's phenomenal. But it's about how the support characters, their purpose and their main purpose is to live and die, to be or to be their support, to bring this everyday person in, and you take the journey with them. And for me, it's wrapped up with magic, folklore, superpowers. Very end of the very first issue, he gets thrown out of a train and run over on a train. You're just an everyday guy walking down the street, and then all of a sudden you get thrown out of a train runs over you, and you're not dead. So it also brings the aspects of, hey, your everyday person can do that. Maybe there's that slight little possibility that, maybe that could happen to me, So for me, in answering, kind of what Brent was originally bringing up, that for me is a lot of what stuck with me, particularly in the early days, was that idea that you don't have to be the guy that's born on another planet and comes in, or exposed to gamma radiation, or all these super things. It's like you're an everyday person, and you find out through genetics and whatever, who you're destined to be and what you're destined to do. And it was a very fun journey to go, and it was 15 issues on the main series. I'm focusing on the main series because there was a huge difference between the other ones, but it was just, like I said, it was a fun trip. And for me, being somebody, being exposed to comics, it was just one really fun ride. and things bad happen, and and what the hell's this or what the hell is that, and ogre, one of the cover for number 4 is like ogre, and there's an ogre standing behind him. He doesn't know it's right there. It was a fun story that brings a lot of magic and folklore and really cool stuff together. And for me, that is what I enjoyed about comics when I first got into it, and I still love to see, and I wish we could see a lot more of that type of story instead of just a five issue slugfest between this person and that person, and the world is being decimated, and and so has to come in, and everything's going bad, and then somebody comes in and turns the tide, and then the tide turns back, and it's just one big thing. It's like, let's go with that, and some of those early things that people took a chance on, your elf quests, your just a lot of cool stuff, and I think I'd like to see more of that, and that I think is the fun in doing it. So being able to experiment and play with stuff, I think is great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
For the record, I have not read that book or that series. I'm gonna have to find it. I remember seeing it advertised, but never actually got my shot to get it in. So I just want to put that out there.
The first series is called Makes a Hero Discovered.
Right.
There's Defined, there's Denied, but Discovery is the first series, and you can find, I think they image reprinted the Grat trades, like volume 1 and 2 for those. So.
I'm putting it on my list, Dave.
Yeah,
because then we could talk about that. All right.
I think you'll enjoy it. So, yeah.
We have been That Silverline Show on Tuesday, and check out our other streams that we have. We have a Wednesday Whammers at 9:00 Eastern, and Silver Sunday on obviously Sunday at 8:00. And I'm not sure our subject for next week is going to be the same that it is right now, so I'm not going to say it. But until then, like, subscribe, and make mine.
Make mine.
Silverline.
Hi, I'm Dave Dorman. Make mine Silverline.